welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm talking about my May TBR. I know that there are so many reading events going on in May and so many things going on to participate in, but the event that I am most excited about is the read-along that I happen to be hosting, and that is LM Montgomermay. You may have already seen the announcement video that I posted, but I will link that in case you haven't seen it and you would like to participate, because it's kind of a low-key readathon in that there's not a million reading prompts. There's just a few. But honestly, if you read anything by Ellen Montgomery in the month of May, then you can say that you have participated. There is a bingo board, which I will have linked down below and will also be sharing on my Instagram, and any of you who are participating can use the hashtag #LMMontgomermay, so that way we can find your posts as well. But I'm super excited to be hosting this readathon with some really lovely ladies, Dia, Chelsea, Courtney, and also Chantel, who I will all have linked in the description down below, so you can go check out their channels if you haven't already. So the books that I am reading for LM Montgomermay, first of all, I will be, of course, reading the group read, Kilmeny of the Orchard, which is one that I have not yet read. So I'm really excited. We kind of purposely chose a lesser known LM Montgomery that is a standalone, so that way it wasn't like people were starting a whole nother series, and out of the 5 of us hosts, only one of us has read it. So I'm really excited to be reading this for the very first time. It is about a young lady who lives on Prince Edward Island, who I believe she's mute, and she also plays the violin, and there's a man who is new to town and encounters her in an orchard, her family's orchard, and I'm assuming it's probably romantic. But I'm really looking forward to giving this one a try. Another reading prompt is to read a short story that was written by Ellen Montgomery, and I actually happen to have this slightly, well, I was gonna say it's slightly beat up, but it's more just like the cover is torn. The rest of it is in great shape. Of this short story collection, Against the Odds, which I found at a thrift store, and I've never seen this book at all before, so I was really excited to find a short story collection by her. So I'll be reading at least one of the ones out of this, but I might read more than one. We'll just kind of see what time permits. Then another prompt is to read a book or a poem mentioned in Anne of Green Gables. So obviously a poem is much shorter, so I'm looking into potentially reading some Tennyson poems. But I did find out that The Vicar of Wakefield, written by Oliver Goldsmith, is actually referenced in Anne of Green Gables, which is really exciting. That's one that I've been wanting to read. It was written in the Regency time period, and it's pretty short. It's under 200 pages, so that might be potentially doable. So those are my 2 options for that. We'll just kind of see how the month goes. And then the last is to read a nonfiction. So I actually have 2 nonfictions, one of which is coming in the mail and one of which is coming from my library that I'm waiting for it to come in. And the one that I'm waiting for my library is House of Dreams by Liz Rosenberg, I think. And I love the cover of this one. I just think it's really lovely. And obviously it's about Ellen Montgomery's life. And then the other one is Kindred Spirits by Catherine Andronic. And that one is the one that I'm waiting for it to come in the mail. So those are my 2 options. They're both pretty short, and I'm just gonna kind of like flip through, see which one I like better. They're probably fairly similar information being conveyed, but I just wanted to look through. I'm pretty sure Kindred Spirits is actually like middle grade or intended for children, so that's the reason why I bought it, is because I think that my daughter would really enjoy looking through it, because she has absolutely loved the Anne of Green Gables books. She's only read the first 3, but she loves all of them, so I think she might be interested to learn more about Ellen Montgomery's life as well. So those are my plans for Ellen Montgomermay, but that's not all. Of course, I have some buddy reads, and I have some books that I'm reading for some challenges and some other things as well. So starting off with the buddy reads, I am reading The Shadow Line by Joseph Conrad with my lovely friends Dia from Novel Idea and Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. They were already planning on reading this together, and then my Patreon read for the month of February was Heart of Darkness, and it was my very first Conrad, and I really enjoyed him and wanted to read more by him, and Dia so graciously invited me to crash their buddy read to read another Joseph Conrad. So I have no idea what it's about at all, and I don't really need to know, because I already know that I really love Joseph Conrad's writing. It's so lush and vivid, and I really love it. I would guess from the cover that it has something to do with some sort of seafaring adventure. So that's pretty much all I know, and I guess that's all I need to know. It's relatively short, so I don't think it'll take that long to read. Another buddy read that I have going on in May is I should be reading Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I read Words of Radiance in the month of April with my friend Whitney. Her channel name is Whitney Drew. I'll have her linked below as well. And we decided we want to just keep reading the Stormlight Archives together, and I had some people tell me that Warbreaker is a really good book to read in between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. So we'll be reading that one. It's much shorter than Stormlight Archive books, so hopefully it won't take me like a lot of the month to read like Words of Radiance did. Another series that I'm continuing on with that is also a buddy read is Arc of a Scythe by Neil Shusterman. So I read the first book, Scythe, in April with my friend Dia from Novel Idea. She's going to be mentioned a million times in this video apparently. But anyways, we read Scythe together last month and we decided we want to continue on with the series. So we're hoping maybe towards the end of the month to be able to read book 2, which is Thunderhead. But we'll see. That may potentially actually end up being like partly in May, partly in June, or at the beginning of June. We're just gonna kind of like wait and see how our months go, but that is potentially on the docket for this month. And then I have a couple of big classics that I'm hoping to make some progress in. I took a lot of the month to work on a couple of books, and as a result didn't get much read in these books. So the first of which is Middlemarch by George Eliot, which I did start in March but barely read any, just like a couple of chapters, and now I'm about 100 pages in, which is obviously not that far, but I really want to get back into this because I was really enjoying it. But I was reading it at the same time I was reading Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope. And even though the stories weren't even remotely similar, it was just kind of hard for me to do both at once for some reason. Maybe it's because it was both like Victorian literature. I don't know. Their writing styles aren't even similar. I was just having a hard time focusing on so many larger books. Not that Barchester Towers is that big, but I was reading Barchester Towers, I was reading Words of Radiance, I was trying to read Middlemarch, and I think that there was something else I was working on. I don't know, but there was a couple of books that were just kind of larger, and so that made it difficult for me to really make any progress in any of them. So I'm hoping with the amount of shorter books that I have this month that I can actually really devote a lot of time to Middlemarch this month. Oh, and I should mention I'm reading this with Stephanie from Miss Fletcher's Reads and Kate from the Literary Apothecary. And then a book that I haven't started yet, but the people I'm reading it with have started, is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I am reading this with Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and then Amy from Amy of Hearth Ridge is actually like joining in the conversation with us. She has been reading it as well, so I really want to get started on this one, but I just had too many big books to start another big book. So I don't really necessarily anticipate finishing this in May, but I would like to at least start it. I'm also continuing to make some progress on my Read or Rid project, which if you're unfamiliar with that, I will link the video where I kind of explain that and give my TBR, but essentially I pick some books off my shelf that have been sitting there for a while, or I'm like wondering why I even have them, or you know, things like that. And I have to read them by the end of the year, or I have to get rid of them. So I have been using 2 challenges to help me make some progress in that list. And those challenges are the Buzzwordathon and the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. The Buzzwordathon is hosted by Books and Lala, and the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge is hosted by Chantel at Chantel Reads All Day. So the way that Chantel has scheduled the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge this year is really fun because the prompts build off of one another. So the first one I think had to start with a certain word, and then the next one had to have like complementary colors on the cover, and it just keeps going and so on and so on. And the prompt for May is a book that is longer than the book that you chose in the month of April. So the book that I chose for the month of April is Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And so a book that I chose that is longer is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. And this book is actually really long. I may regret having this on my TBR with some of the other books I have on here. It is over 500 pages long, so, but just barely. It actually looks thicker than that to me. I don't know why, But anyways, I don't really know anything about this. I know that it's a YA fantasy, I think. And I've heard some people criticize it by saying the writing is too like lovely and flowery. And sometimes I enjoy that type of writing. I do have kind of a line where some things are too much for me, but in general, I enjoy really beautiful writing. And so that's kind of why I was drawn to this duology. This is the first book, and I do have the second book as well. They were both library discard books. So I figured I'd pick them up because I think I paid like 25 or 50 cents each. So it seemed worth it for a book that I was potentially interested in reading. And then I've had a couple of friends who have similar reading tastes to me actually tell me that they really enjoyed it and they think that I will too. So this is going on my list for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. And then the prompt for the Buzzwordathon in the month of May is flavors in the title. So I actually made a video with some recommendations for that, and some of the books in that recommendations video were ones that I hadn't read that are potentials for me to read this month. The unfortunate thing is that none of the books on my Read or Read project have any flavors or food related things in the titles. So that's kind of a bummer. So I can't actually check something off of my Read or Read project with this, but that's okay. So the options that I have are Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. This is a historical fiction. I think it's dual timeline, which is not usually my jam, but there are exceptions. One of the timelines I think takes place in a Japanese internment camp, and one is a more modern day timeline. Then I also have a nonfiction, which this is the one that I'm leaning towards, and it's called Breaking Bread with the Dead by Alan Jacobs. The subtitle said A Reader's Guide to a More Tranquil Mind, but I think that the book in general has to do with reading older works, reading classics, reading books with people who have since passed on, and as a result being able to understand the past better and connect with previous time periods and all of that kind of stuff, which totally sounds like my jam. It's also really short. It's less than 200 pages, but I have one other option that I did not mention in that video because I forgot. I had put it on hold for my Kindle for my library and it came in, and that is the book Almond by Won Pyong-sun. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I think this book is Korean. It might be Japanese, but I'm about 90% sure that it's Korean. And it's a book that's been recommended really frequently by some K-pop idols. So I was looking up, just kind of seeing different books that K-pop idols have read and recommended. And of course, RM from BTS has recommended this because he's big brain energy. And so he has really, really good book recommendations, has a lot of book recommendations because he's pretty well read. But also, I think other members of BTS have read this. A few of the members of Twice have read this. A few of members of Red Velvet have read this and recommended it. So it's one that's actually kind of like a K-pop darling, I guess. I don't think I've ever said that about a book before. So I'm really intrigued by that. And the hold has come in for my library for that. I'm pretty sure it's a short book, like a novella length. Pretty sure it's under 200 pages. So that's a very strong contender as well. I don't know a whole lot about what it's about. I'm pretty sure it's about a young boy who is kind of has like sociopathic tendencies in terms that he just doesn't really feel or experience emotions, and so he has trouble with social cues and those kinds of things, and then something terrible happens and the story goes from there. And that's pretty much all that I know about it. So I'm super intrigued by that one. I have a couple of other books that are going on this list as well because I don't have enough books, apparently. I have a lot of books on this list. So last month for my Read or Read project, one of the books that I was supposed to pick up is Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. And this is a book that a lot of people really, really love. I'm pretty sure it's historical fiction and I don't know anything else about it other than that, but I know a lot of people really, really love it, including people who have very similar reading tastes to me. And I have just like barely started this one, but I do want to continue reading it. So that's going on the hopeful TBR. I may try to see if I can find an audiobook to read more of it. And then my sweet aforementioned friend Whitney has loaned me Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. She actually bought a physical copy of it for her daughter who's in high school. and her daughter's in the middle of some other books. And so she loaned it to me, and I just was so excited. It's like on my Amazon wish list, but I haven't had the opportunity to read it. The library hasn't purchased it or anything. And so I felt so honored that her daughter let me borrow this book before anyone has even opened it. Because Whitney has read it, but I think she had the Kindle version. And this is obviously the physical version. So I will be the first one that gets to open this and read this. So thank you, Savannah Grace, for allowing me to borrow your book. So I really want to get to this, first of all, because I think I'm going to really love it. I don't know much about the story, but I know that it has like fairy tale vibes, and it does take place in the Cosmere. I really, really want to read this one. It's shorter, I think. Yeah, it's under 400 pages, so it's not that long, and the print is actually kind of big. I don't know if this, I don't think that this is necessarily like a YA book, but I kind of get YA vibes from it, so I don't really know. I don't think it's labeled as YA though. But anyways, I really, really want to get to Tress. It's one of the books that I'm like the most excited to try to read this month, even though it's not a buddy read, it's not part of a readathon, it's not part of any reading challenges. So by all rights, I should shove this off to another month, but I don't want to. So my hopes are actually to get to this one maybe towards the beginning of the month, so that way I can give it back to Savannah Grace so she can read it. So that is my tentative TBR for the month of May. Some of this, like I said, is flexible. There may be books that I get to. There are certainly books that I don't anticipate finishing this month, like Moby Dick. And I was actually initially planning to start Don Quixote this month, but I looked at this TBR and I said, no, that's not happening. Don Quixote is getting pushed off to June, and I was planning on that being like probably a 2-month long read anyway, just because it's longer. So may read that in June and July. We'll just kind of see, but that's okay. That's okay. I really, 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 really want to get back to Middlemarch because I was really enjoying the little bit of it that I read. So that's the classic, other than the Ellen Montgomery books, that's the classic that I just really, really want to focus on this month. So I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What readathons are you participating in? There are so many wonderful ones, and I found myself getting so much FOMO as I was looking at people's TBRs for May and wanting to jump in on like Misery May because they're reading Thomas Hardy books, and I love Thomas Hardy. And then I know that there's just so many wonderful things that are happening in May, but I have to scale back and not have the most FOMO ever. So let me live vicariously through you and tell me what readathons you are participating in and what books you are the most excited to read this month. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.